Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to compare two lightweight gaming mice from Roccat. The Roccat Kone Pro that you can see here, and the Roccat Burst Pro. Both of them are pro gaming mice with a number of really nice specifications to them, with slightly different design and features set up that make them worth comparing and talking about in case you're considering these Roccat mice. They're both nice looking and they're both great to use. Now, I've done unboxing and review videos on them separately that I'll link to in the description, but I want to talk to you about the differences between them and which is my preference between these two mice. And as you'll see from these shots, they're quite different looking. The Burst Pro that you can see here has a lot more RGB lighting, for example. And one thing that you will note is that both designs use honeycomb but without the holes, and that is one of the selling points of both these mice. They're super lightweight gaming mice but without the usual holes that come with that, meaning that you don't have to worry about the dust and dirt ingress that you'd normally have with those lightweight mice with loads of holes in them. So that's a bonus in my mind and very nice for messy gamers. Now, there are some differences in these specs and features as well, and you'll note, for example, that the Roccat Kone Pro seen here has Roccat's Owl Eye sensor capable of 19,000 DPI, which is based on Pixart's PAW3370 sensor, while the Burst Pro uses the same sensor but with a 16,000 DPI that's based on Pixart's PMW3389. So very slight differences there, but they both have 50 Gs of acceleration. They both use Roccat's Titan switch optical setup, so optical switches for a more accurate press with up to 100 million clicks on them. They both have AIMO intelligent RGB lighting and some very nice RGB lighting that you can see here, and they're both lightweight as well. The Roccat Kone Pro seen here, for example, weighs in at 66 grams. It also has the bonus of having 3 PTFE feet underneath. They're pre-heat treated, which means they're very slick. You also have extra ones included in the box that you can swap out, and it's really nice for that. It's very easy to move around, very slick, very fast and agile, and because it's lightweight, it's fantastic. The Kone Pro is also designed to be ergonomic, so it's a right-handed gaming mouse. It has a really sort of ergonomic shape to it, so it fits nicely in the hand. I feel like this mouse is slightly larger than the Burst Pro, and so if you have larger hands, you'll probably find it fits a bit nicer in your hand and is a bit more comfortable thanks to that sort of ergonomic shape to it, which has a slight sort of indent for your thumb, for example. Has these large buttons on the side, the thumb rest buttons, but one thing I've found is that they aren't that easy to sort of press from below, and you'll see some more shots of that on what I mean in a minute. Whereas the Burst Pro has a slightly different setup. It is a little bit smaller, as you'll see from these shots, and when my hand is on top of it in a minute. And you will notice, for example, it also has a DPI button on top, which the Kone Pro does not. The Kone Pro has a button on the underside, which is default set to profile switching, and the Burst Pro has no buttons on the underside and just 2 PTFE feet, but you do have extras included in the box, so you can swap those out when you want to and adjust that. There are some other design accents which are interesting. The Burst Pro, for example, has this sort of hexagonal dot system as the thumb grip, and I actually find that preferable to the design on the Kone Pro, which I found to be a bit slippery, whereas the Burst Pro, it sits in the hand a bit nicer, at least for me. However, the Burst Pro is on the smaller side, so it is a smaller mouse. So if you're small hands, this is the one to go for in my mind. It also doesn't have that ergonomic shape like the Kone Pro, so it's a bit more symmetrical, perhaps not as nice to hold on to. However, I did find that this is my personal preference out of the two. I think this is a nicer mouse. It's less slippery and easier to use. Now, both mice also use Roccat's super flexible cables, so you don't have to worry about nagging cables and problems with that weighing you down. They're both very agile mice and quick on the desk thanks to those slippery feet, flexible cable, and overall lightweight frame, which makes them easy to use. Both found to be very accurate for gaming as well, thanks to those Titan optical switches and just the general setup. But as I noted, the Kone Pro's side buttons, I didn't find that they're as easy to sort of thumb as the ones on the Burst Pro. Although they look like they're sticking out from the video footage, they don't sort of jut out enough from the thumb rest to be able to feel them. Here you can see the difference in the cables. They're both 1.8 meter USB cables designed to be as flexible as possible, kind of similar to a shoelace, and that is quite common with these lightweight gaming mice, designed to basically have a really lightweight frame and then a really floppy, easy to use USB cable that doesn't weigh things down. And so the end result is a mouse that's really agile and kind of like a wireless mouse without that nag of the cables, but also with the accuracy and low latency of a wired mouse. Now you can see my hand size here, so you get an idea of what the fit is like. Roughly between 7 and 8 inches depending on how you measure it. And I found, as I said, that the Kone Pro fits a bit nicer in my hand because I do have larger hands, and that ergonomic shape means that it's very comfortable. However, I think I prefer the Burst Pro simply because the grips on it are a bit better. The grips on this, as you'll see in a second, are a bit sort of shiny, and when your hands get oily or hot, I found it a bit too slippery. Here you can see a shot of the digital scales that I have. This mouse is meant to weigh in at 66 grams. With the cable, it actually comes in at 92 or 91 grams. But if you remove the cable and take that off of the scales and just have the mouse itself, mine actually weighed in at 63 grams. And as I said, the Burst Pro is meant to weigh in at around 68. So there's very little difference in the overall weight of the two mice. They're both very lightweight. Incredibly lightweight actually, and so very agile and easy to move around the desk. So if you're a pro gamer or you want something that's really easy to move, then these are it. But here you can see a close-up shot of the Kone Pro side grip. You'll note it is ridged and there are ridges running down it, but as you can see from these shots, it's quite shiny. It's got quite a slick body to it, and unfortunately there's no grip tape included in the box. I feel like if they had included some grip tape, it might make it a bit easier to use, at least for me, and therefore a better mouse. However, it is still a very nice looking one, and you'll see differences in the RGB lighting coming in here as well. Another close-up with the Burst Pro to give you a difference in the thumb rest design. You'll note that there isn't as much of an ergonomic shape to it, but the sort of grip on it is a lot nicer in my mind. It's much easier to hold on to. Also a bit more stylish, bit different styling. It's a personal preference, obviously. I found the buttons a bit easier to access. Now onto the RGB lighting. As you will have noted already from these clips, the RGB on the Kone Pro is just on the mouse buttons, which is fairly unusual. It's not on the mouse wheel, it's not on the logo, it's not on the back, it's not on the underside. It's just on those two buttons at the top. You'll also note the honeycomb design visible through there as well. Now this RGB lighting actually looks really nice. When I first got the mouse out of the box and I was looking at it from the side, I saw these sort of raised areas around the mice buttons. I thought it was a bit strange, but I wondered why until I plugged it in, and then it became clear and you can see how much RGB lighting sort of bleeds out of there. It's really cool because it basically lights up your fingers. It also means that when you're holding the mouse, you're not covering the RGB zones with your palm, and therefore you're not blocking the light, and you get to actually enjoy it glowing on your fingertips and on your desk. And if you have this combined with other Roccat products that I'll show you in a minute, it also looks really nice. Or if you look closely though, what you will see is there are some gaps under those mouse buttons, so it is still possible that you might get dirt in there at some point. So it's not a perfect system with those sort of raised housings. You can see just where the sort of mouse cable is. Above that, there is the potential for dirt get inside there, but it does mean that you get a very nice sort of design. Unusual one. I've not seen any other mice that have RGB lighting just on the buttons themselves, so it's really nice touch. Actually, I think it's a very nice way of doing it. It's also interesting to see that honeycomb design on the front. So although this mouse doesn't have holes in it as traditional super lightweight mice do, it still sort of has that sort of accent with the honeycomb on it as well. Quite nice styling, very unusual, and very different from the Burst Pro that you can see here. The Burst Pro has two RGB lighting zones. The rear sort of honeycomb shell, which is covered by a protective outer layer, and then on the mouse wheel. One thing that nagged at me about this one though was it isn't perfectly symmetrical. The right hand side of my mouse, for example, looks a bit different to the left. Now, I don't know if you'll pick up that on that in this, but you can see when it's dark, the RGB lighting also sort of shines into the back of the front switches as well, so you can see quite a bit of more RGB lighting on this, although a lot of it, as I said, is covered with your palm when you're actually using it and gaming on it. but I think that perhaps the Burst Pro is the better looking of the two. Again, this is a personal preference. You might have a different opinion on that. And it's certainly nice for the Kone Pro to be lighting up your fingers, and that's not something you get with the Burst Pro. But the overall vibe of the Burst Pro is a little bit nicer in my mind. One other interesting effect of that RGB lighting is that on the underside, the PTFE feet make a little sad face looking back at you, which is a bit odd. So you can see that both these mice are very nice and very capable. They've got some good specs. I'll leave all the information on that and other things in the description, as well as links to my reviews where I go into a bit more depth on things like the software and talk to you about what that's like. One other thing that's worth noting is that I don't like the Kone Pro's mouse wheel. I found it a bit scratchy and uncomfortable. However, they're both quiet mice. They don't rattle. They seem to be well constructed, and they have been a pleasure to use. Both fantastic offerings from Roccat. And I really like Roccat's AIMO intelligent lighting system, which you can see in action here, which is essentially washing over both mice at the same time, and it reacts to what you're doing, the apps that you have running and other things, and results in a really nice looking RGB setup. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments if you've got any questions. I'd like to take a moment to give a shout out to my extra special YouTube members who've clicked that join button and pay a monthly fee to help support the channel. That includes Meaty Keyboard Raw, Curtis Williams, J Shank 007, Sir Spawns a Lot, Jeffrey Johnson, Kraken Tortoise, Moist Kebab, Feaster Bunny, and maybe you. Click that join button to find out the benefits of being a member of my channel, and thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting, hilarious, or otherwise. Take a look at these other videos that I think you might find interesting as well, and have a look at the description for links and other information you might find useful. Click that join button to see the benefits of being a member of my YouTube channel, and most importantly, have a great life.